Are you ready to discover the mindset that sets extraordinary women apart from the crowd? In a world filled with noise, pressure, and opinions, some women rise, not because of privilege or luck, but because of how they think. They carry a quiet strength, a spiritual clarity, and a boldness that cannot be bought or taught in schools. They don't just react, they respond with wisdom. They don't follow trends, they follow truth. They are not driven by the applause of the world, but by the whisper of purpose deep within their soul. In this message, we will unveil the rare mental shifts and spiritual disciplines that make these women stand tall, lead with grace, and walk in divine authority. If you've ever felt called to something greater, if you've ever sensed that you were made to think, act, and live differently, this message is your confirmation. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear could unlock the confidence, clarity, and courage you've been praying for. A smart woman is not defined by the standards of this world, nor is her brilliance measured by how loud her voice echoes in boardrooms or how many degrees she holds on her wall. Her wisdom is evident in where she turns first, in the stillness of her heart. She seeks the counsel of God when decisions weigh heavy on her spirit. She doesn't run to social media, friends, or fleeting opinion. She bows her head and goes straight to the throne of grace. She knows that in a world full of noise, only the voice of God can guide her steps in righteousness and truth. She understands that the beginning of wisdom is not in her intellect, her education, or even her experience, but in the fear of the Lord. The reverence she holds for her Creator compels her to make choices not based on impulse, but grounded in eternal truth. A woman who thinks differently doesn't chase after answers that will only soothe her for the moment. She hungers for the kind of wisdom that lasts through storms and wilderness seasons. The wisdom that comes from God is pure, peaceable, gentle, full of mercy and good fruits. She seeks that, she clings to it, she meditates on the scriptures day and night, not just to check off a religious box, but to renew her mind. Her thoughts are not tossed like the waves because her roots go deep in the Word. When the world is spinning in confusion, she stands still because she has already consulted the Almighty. When temptation comes cloaked in opportunity, when emotions threaten to blur truth, when her heart is pulled between what feels good and what is right, she leans not on her own understanding. In all her ways, she acknowledges Him, and He makes her paths straight. This kind of woman knows the power of a quiet spirit. She has been through enough to understand that God's whisper is more powerful than the world's shout. She doesn't need to shout over others to be heard, because heaven hears her every whispered prayer. She also knows that true wisdom comes with humility. She's not puffed up with pride about her spiritual maturity or her discernment. Instead, she stays low before the Lord. She asks for wisdom daily, knowing that He gives generously to all who ask without finding fault. She doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but she knows the one who does. She doesn't lean on human reasoning to solve every problem, because she's seen too often how logic can fail, but God never does. She's walked through fires and valleys, and each time it wasn't her cleverness that rescued her, but God's guiding hand. She values stillness over speed. She knows that waiting on the Lord isn't wasting time, it's positioning herself for clarity. While others rush, she rests in the assurance that His timing is perfect. She sees delay as divine instruction and unanswered prayers as heaven's protection. She understands that God's wisdom often looks foolish to the world, but to her it is life and peace. This woman has made a decision, a fierce and holy one, that she will not move unless God moves. She refuses to be dragged into chaos when she has access to divine clarity. Her mind is made up, not because she's stubborn, but because she's been sanctified. She knows that seeking God's wisdom first isn't just a spiritual suggestion, it's a survival strategy. It's how she builds a life that cannot be shaken, a legacy that glorifies the Lord, and a mind that remains unclouded by the distractions of the age. She thinks differently because she prays differently. She lives differently because she listens differently. She is smart, not because she knows everything, but because she knows the one who does. A woman who thinks differently does not allow emotions to dictate her every move. She understands that feelings are real, but they are not always reliable. She knows that emotions can rise and fall like waves, and if she lets herself be ruled by them, her life will always be in a state of turmoil. A smart woman has learned to pause before reacting. She prays instead of panicking. She reflects instead of retaliating. When offense comes, when disappointment knocks, when betrayal cuts deep, she doesn't let her emotions write the script. She submits them to God. She knows that the heart is deceitful above all things, and she refuses to build her life on unstable ground. This woman has walked through enough valleys to recognize that impulsive reactions lead to long-term regrets. She has trained herself to be still before responding. She does not let anger speak for her, nor does she allow fear to hold the microphone. Instead, she invites the Holy Spirit into her emotions. She prays for the fruit of the Spirit to dominate her inner world: love, joy, peace, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That last one, self-control, is her daily weapon. It protects her from saying what she'll later wish she hadn't. It shields her from making decisions in moments of weakness. She chooses to rise above her moods and to live from a place of purpose, not pressure. In a world that says follow your heart, she has chosen to follow the truth. Her emotional discipline is not a suppression of who she is. It is a surrender to who God is in her. She understands that a wise woman guards her mind and soul from being hijacked by momentary feelings. She is aware that the enemy often works through unchecked emotions, using anger to destroy relationships, fear to paralyze dreams, insecurity to hinder progress. But she is not ignorant of these schemes. She arms herself with the Word. When emotions flare, she responds with Scripture. When anxiety knocks, she opens the door with prayer. When discouragement creeps in, she speaks life over her situation. She refuses to let a temporary emotion define her eternal calling. Her strength is not found in emotional numbness, but in emotional surrender. She doesn't deny her feelings, she just doesn't worship them. She lays them at the feet of Jesus. She trusts that he can handle the full range of her emotions: her anger, her sadness, her joy, her confusion. And in that sacred surrender, she finds clarity. She finds strength. She finds stability. She becomes a woman who can be trusted with influence because she's not ruled by what's happening around her. She's anchored in what God is doing within her. Her emotions serve her. They do not sabotage her. She feels deeply, but she moves wisely. She cries when necessary, but she still shows up. She may get knocked down emotionally, but she does not stay down. She knows that maturity is not about denying emotion, but mastering response through the power of God working in her. A smart woman understands the immeasurable value of time. She does not squander her days waiting for others to validate her worth or approve her path. She knows that time is not just money, It is purpose. It is destiny. It is a gift from God that must be stewarded with care. Every minute she spends is an investment in the future she's building. She chooses her focus intentionally, aware that distraction is one of the enemy's greatest weapons. She doesn't let social media shape her self-inflage or comparison steal her confidence. She guards her time like a sacred treasure, knowing that how she spends her days will shape the story of her life. She does not waste energy chasing applause from people who do not understand her calling. She moves with quiet confidence, doing the hard work in silence, trusting that in due time, God will reveal what He has been doing in the hidden places. She understands that not everyone deserves access to her time. She is not driven by people-pleasing or the fear of missing out. Her time is a reflection of her priorities. And she has learned the discipline of saying no, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. She knows that every yes is also a no to something else, and she chooses wisely. Her calendar is not filled with empty obligations, but with intentional pursuits that align with her God-given purpose. She values solitude as much as she values service, because she knows that in the quiet, God often speaks the loudest. She makes space in her day for prayer, reflection, and growth, because she understands that spiritual clarity requires margin, not noise. A woman who thinks differently does not allow urgency to replace importance. She refuses to live in reaction mode. Instead, she plans, she prepares, and she prioritizes. She rises early not just to check boxes, but to center her soul. She seeks wisdom from above to guide her decisions and invites God into her schedule. She lives with eternity in mind, knowing that time is a test of stewardship. The way she manages her minutes reflects the weight of her mission. She is not easily distracted because she has already determined what deserves her attention. She knows that busyness is not the same as fruitfulness. Just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean it's right for her. She stays in her lane, focused on her assignment. She is not afraid to be different, to be misunderstood, or to be set apart. She would rather walk alone in purpose than be surrounded in confusion. She understands the power of pace. She doesn't rush through life trying to prove something. She walks in rhythm with grace, trusting that God orders her steps and redeems her time. She sees each day not as a burden, but as a divine opportunity. And she refuses to waste it living small, thinking small, or settling for less than what God has placed within her. A smart woman thinks differently because she has learned to embrace failure as a necessary ingredient of growth. She does not fear failure because she knows it is not the end. It is information. It is redirection. It is refinement. She has come to understand that failure is not a sign of weakness, but a signal that she had the courage to try. Every successful woman has walked through doors of disappointment, setbacks, and rejection. But instead of letting those moments define her, she uses them as stepping stones. She doesn't wallow in self-pity or retreat into fear. She asks the hard questions. What did I learn? Where did I grow? How can I rise from this? She knows that resilience is not born in ease, but in adversity, and every misstep is an invitation to rise stronger, wiser, and more determined. She views failure through the lens of faith. She sees it not as a punishment, but as preparation. God uses closed doors, unanswered prayers, and painful delays to shape her character and sharpen her vision. She no longer begs for comfort. She asks for courage. She no longer prays for escape. She seeks endurance, because she knows that if God allowed it, He will use it. Nothing is wasted in His hand. She doesn't let shame have the final word. She picks herself up, dusts herself off, and keeps moving forward, not because it's easy, but because she knows her story isn't finished yet. A woman who thinks differently is not paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. She takes calculated risks. She steps out in faith. She understands that progress often looks messy and success is rarely linear. When she falls, she doesn't fall apart. She falls into grace. She reflects, adjusts, and continues the journey. And in doing so, she inspires others to see failure not as a scar, but as a mark of bravery. She shares her lessons, not just her victories, because she knows that transparency builds bridges. Her testimony is not in her perfection, but in her persistence. This woman doesn't compare her failures to someone else's highlight reel. She stays in her lane and embraces her own process. She knows that what looks like failure to man may actually be faithfulness in God's eyes. Obedience doesn't always bring applause, but it brings peace. She surrenders the need for immediate results and trusts in divine timing. She lets go of regret and picks up revelation. She stops asking, "Why me?" and starts asking, "What now?" That shift in perspective allows her to move forward with dignity, even when the path is unclear. A smart woman doesn't allow failure to speak louder than her calling. She has been through enough to know that setbacks often precede breakthroughs. What the enemy meant to destroy her only developed her. Her identity is not tied to achievements, and her value isn't diminished by her defeats. She is not easily shaken because her foundation is firm. She walks with her head high, not because she hasn't failed, but because she didn't let failure have the final say. A smart woman thinks differently because she knows the power of choosing peace over proving herself. In a world that often equates worth with noise, appearances, and validation from others, she operates from a place of quiet confidence. She doesn't need to announce her greatness or argue her value, because she understands that true strength is revealed in how she responds, not in how loudly she reacts. She doesn't waste time chasing approval or engaging in unnecessary battles. Her energy is reserved for purpose, not pettiness. Her dignity matters more than the temporary satisfaction of proving someone wrong. She lets her actions, consistency, and character speak for her. This woman has discernment. She knows that not every fight is hers to fight, and not every opinion deserves a response. She isn't easily baited into drama because her soul is anchored in something deeper. Her peace is not a weakness. It is her strategy. She recognizes that the moment she allows someone else to control her reactions, she gives them power, and a smart woman does not give her power away cheaply. She has learned to walk away not because she is afraid, but because she has already won by choosing peace over chaos. She doesn't entertain confusion when clarity is her calling. Her silence is not surrender, it is wisdom. She doesn't find her identity in competition. She's not intimidated by others' success because she is secure in her own lane. She supports others genuinely without feeling the need to outshine them. Her mind is focused, her motives are clean, and her mission is clear. She doesn't seek to dominate, she seeks to contribute. That mindset frees her from the exhausting cycle of comparison. Confidence is not loud or boastful. It is steady, rooted in knowing who she is and who she belongs to. She knows that grace, not grit alone, brought her this far. That's why she doesn't rush, panic, or strive to force outcomes. She trusts divine timing. A smart woman also protects her peace by being selective with her circle. She's not afraid to love from a distance if it means guarding her mental, emotional, and spiritual health. She understands that who she surrounds herself with shapes her atmosphere. So she aligns with those who inspire, uplift, and challenge her to grow. She avoids the noise of gossip, bitterness, and negativity because she knows peace thrives in environments of truth and maturity. She has no appetite for drama because she's too focused on destiny. She also chooses peace within herself. She has made peace with her past, accepted her imperfections, and let go of the need to perform for acceptance. Her confidence is quiet because it comes from being aligned with her values and her Creator. She rests in the assurance that she is enough even when others don't see it. That inner peace becomes her compass. It helps her navigate pressure without crumbling, setbacks without despair, and criticism without shrinking. She doesn't need to be seen to be significant or praised to feel purposeful. She is not moved by flattery or wounded by ignorance. Her validation comes from within. This kind of woman is rare because she refuses to let the world define her worth or distract her from her purpose. She embodies strength not by force, but by restraint. She knows that her true victory lies not in proving her point, but in preserving her peace. And in doing so, she becomes unstoppable. Glad you're here. And Josh would not be here. Hey, I would think otherwise. Different ways than deep thanks God for what he did, and he does. In a world that demands logic, data, and proof, she moves with something deeper, something sacred. She understands that her inner voice, that gentle whisper from within, often knows before her mind can explain. She's not quick to dismiss that tug in her spirit or that quiet warning in her heart. Instead, she leans into it, knowing that what the world calls gut instinct is often the voice of God giving direction, warning, or confirmation. This isn't superstition. It's a sacred awareness, a connection to something higher that guides her steps and guards her purpose. She doesn't need everything to make sense on paper before she moves forward, because she has learned to walk by faith and not by sight. She understands that divine intuition doesn't always shout, it often whispers. And that whisper is enough. She's not reckless, but she is bold when her spirit says move. She's not afraid to pivot when the path no longer aligns with peace. She's not ashamed to walk away from what looks perfect to others but feels wrong to her soul. That's because she has learned that ignoring her intuition often leads to regret, while honoring it leads to wisdom, peace, and purpose. This kind of woman lives with a deep sense of spiritual sensitivity. She cultivates stillness so she can hear. She doesn't just talk in prayer, she listens. She doesn't rush decisions. She waits until her spirit is settled, even if others are pressing her to act. She knows that when God speaks, confusion leaves and peace enters. So she guards her spirit fiercely. She doesn't let the noise of the world drown out the still small voice of truth. She chooses solitude over popularity, stillness over chaos, and discernment over impulsiveness. She also knows that intuition must be sharpened. So she lives in alignment with her values, she studies truth, and she surrounds herself with people who nourish her spirit, not drain it. She doesn't feed her mind with junk and expect her soul to stay sharp. She knows that clarity comes from clean input. So she's careful about what she consumes, what she watches, who she listens to, and where she invests her time. Her clarity is not accidental, it's intentional. She's built a life where she can hear God's voice without interference. A smart woman doesn't just rely on intuition for her own decisions. She uses it in relationships, in business, in leadership. She can sense when someone's words don't match their energy. She can see past surface smiles into real motives. She trusts herself because she knows she walks with the Spirit. That's why she doesn't second guess herself into anxiety. When she knows, she knows. And when she's unsure, she waits until she does. She refuses to be rushed, manipulated, or confused. That's wisdom. That's power. That's discernment in action. What makes her extraordinary is not her education, her looks, or her achievements. It's her ability to trust the divine voice within her. She honors it, develops it, and protects it. While others are chasing answers outside themselves, she's leaning into the truth already, planted in her soul. That is the secret of how she navigates life with such grace, resilience, and clarity. She is not afraid of what's ahead because she knows she will be guided. And because she trusts that guidance, she moves with a confidence that can't be shaken and a peace that cannot be stolen. When a woman dares to think differently, when she grounds her thoughts not in fear but in faith, not in limitation but in divine possibility, she becomes a vessel of God's power in a broken world. The world tells her to fit in, but God calls her to stand out. She listens not to the noise around her, but to the still, small voice within her. She chooses to respond, not react, to lead, not just follow, to build her house with wisdom, not haste, to align her steps with God's will even when the path is narrow. This kind of thinking does not make her proud. It makes her powerful. It doesn't isolate her, it consecrates her. She is not simply smart by human standards, she is wise by heaven. You too are called to this higher way of thinking. You were not created to copy the patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That transformation begins when you choose to think with purpose, with clarity, and with the unwavering trust that God is guiding your every step. Smart women think differently because they know who they are. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I believe that if you've made it this far, it's no accident. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to rise, keep thinking boldly, keep walking faithfully, and may God continue to renew your mind and strengthen your heart for the journey ahead. God bless you.